My boss treated my hard work like garbage, laughing off the promotion I rightfully earned for years. But everything changed when a syndicate leader walked into the boardroom and demanded I take his seat. Now, I'm not just getting a raise. I'm dismantling the entire corporate hierarchy from the shadows. Welcome to Afro-Korean by KK, where love crosses cultures and breaks every rule. Today's story has everything: betrayal, power, retribution, and triumph that no one thought was possible. If you are new here, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop your city in the comments. I love knowing where my fans are watching from. Now let's dive into it. The coffee on Arthur Pendleton's mahogany desk was still steaming when I slammed my Q3 financial restructuring report down, the pages quivering with $50 million in risk. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from 3 years of consuming toxic corporate gaslighting. We are losing money, Arthur, while we need the position of CFO filled, and I am more than qualified for the position. Maya, let's be entirely realistic here, Arthur drawled, leaning back in his Italian leather chair with a patronizing smirk that made my blood boil. He didn't even glance at the numbers. He was too busy polishing his Rolex. You're exceptional at crunching spreadsheets in the dark, but leading people, client-facing optics, it requires an executive presence, certain pedigree. The board isn't looking for someone with your background to sit at the head of the table. My background. My voice dropped into a dangerous, icy tone. My background really, Arthur? My background includes saving this firm from bankruptcy twice this quarter alone. Your name is on the marquee, Arthur, but my algorithms are the only reason your name isn't on a federal subpoena. Arthur barked a loud, mocking laugh, tossing my report into the shredder bin beside his desk without reading a single line. Save the melodrama, Maya. You're a senior analyst. You stay in your lane or you can walk out those glass doors right now. Consider this your final warning about insubordination. The air in the office grew suffocating. Every instinct screamed at me to explode, to scream, to throw his arrogance back in his face. Instead, a chilling calm washed over me. I smiled, slow and deliberate, watching the smug satisfaction spread across his face. All right, Arthur, I whispered, turning on my heel. If that's how we're playing it. I walked back to my cramped cubicle, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My phone buzzed in my blazer pocket. It was a secure, encrypted ping from an external server, a message I had been waiting weeks for. The sender's handle was a single, stylized character, Cho. The audit is complete, the message read. Arthur has routed $4 million in company assets to an offshore shell. Make your move. I pulled up my terminal. Arthur thought he had me boxed in, trapped beneath a glass ceiling designed to crush women like me. He didn't realize that 3 months ago I didn't just discover his embezzlement. I quietly routed the master admin override keys directly to the firm's true, hidden majority shareholder, the man who owned 70% of Apex Global through silent proxy holding companies, the legendary Korean syndicate leader, Sung-hyun Cho. And he was landing at corporate headquarters in 20 minutes. The glass elevator chimed, slicing through the tense hum of the executive floor as the heavy mahogany doors glided open. 2 towering security professionals stepped out first, their sharp suits tailored to conceal tactical readiness, followed by a figure whose very presence commanded absolute obedience. Sung-hyun Cho didn't walk. He glided with the controlled precision of an apex predator who owned the floor beneath his handmade leather shoes. His midnight blue suit caught the sleek lighting, and his sharp razor-cut dark hair framed an expression carved from glacial granite. Arthur Pendleton scrambled from his glass-walled office like a drowning man grasping at a floating splinter, his face slick with panic-induced sweat. He practically tripped over his own Italian loafers as he lunged forward, hands outstretched, a desperate, ingratiating grin plastered across his mouth. Mr. Cho, what an unexpected, absolute honor, Arthur said, his voice cracking slightly under the strain of total terror. We didn't receive any notification about your flight from Seoul. As you can see, our quarterly metrics, entirely engineered under my direct visionary leadership, are outperforming every market projection. The board is thrilled. Stephen Cho did not break his stride. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't even cast a sideways glance at Arthur, treating him as though he were nothing more than a speck of dust on a pristine marble floor. Instead, Stephen's dark, piercing eyes swept across the open-plan bullpen until they locked squarely on me, standing quietly beside my desk. He offered a single respectful dip of his head, a microscopic gesture of profound acknowledgement that sent a visible tremor through the surrounding executive. Then, Stephen turned his heavy predatory gaze back toward Arthur, who was now trembling so violently his cufflinks rattled. "Arthur," Stephen spoke, his voice quiet, melodic, and terrifyingly devoid of warmth. "Your metrics are a calculated fiction. Your leadership is a systemic infection. And your time in this building expires right now." Arthur's jaw slackened, color instantly draining from his face until he looked like a ghost. "Mr. Cho, sir, there has to be a catastrophic misunderstanding. I built this portfolio from scratch. I secured the institutional accounts. She's just an analyst who doesn't understand high-level strategy." Stephen didn't argue. He simply raised two fingers. Behind him, one of his associates stepped forward and dropped a heavy, leather-bound forensic audit ledger onto Arthur's chest. The impact forced a wheezing gasp out of Arthur's lungs as he staggered backward, clutching the file like a shield. "My internal compliance teams have mapped every dollar moving through Apex Global for the past 36 months, Stephen stated, his voice carrying effortlessly across the entire floor, drawing every pair of eyes from the trading desks. "Every profitable asset bearing your signature was actually engineered by Maya Jenkins. Every budget overrun, every botched acquisition, and every hidden liability was your handiwork. And yesterday, you attempted to destroy her risk report to hide your own multi-million-dollar negligence." The silence in the office was absolute. You could hear the distant hum of the ventilation system and the ragged, shallow breathing of Arthur Pendleton as he looked around the room for an ally, finding only averted gazes and pale, terrified faces. Arthur's panic boiled over into naked desperation, his voice rising in an ugly, frantic whine. "You can't listen to her. She's an outsider. She doesn't have the pedigree, she doesn't have the background to lead a global firm. She's nothing without my oversight." Stephen stopped dead in his tracks. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. He turned slowly, stepping inside Arthur's personal space until he towered over him. "Pedigree," Stephen repeated, the single word dripping with a lethal, controlled fury. "Pedigree is built on blood, sweat, and absolute competence, Arthur, not stolen valor and corporate theft. And as the absolute majority shareholder and owner of this enterprise, I dictate who holds the crown." Without waiting for Arthur to sputter another excuse, Stephen walked past him, pushing open the heavy glass doors to the primary boardroom. He strode straight to the head of the long mahogany table, the seat Arthur had guarded jealously for years, and pulled out the chair. But instead of sitting down himself, Stephen rested his hand on the high leather back and turned his eyes toward the bullpen, locking his gaze directly onto mine. "Maya Jenkins," Stephen commanded, his voice ringing with the absolute authority of an edict. "Pack Arthur's desk. Take his office. From this second onward you lead everything, every department, every account, every global branch. Step into your seat." My heart hammered against my ribs, but every drop of hesitation evaporated. I smoothed the lapels of my charcoal blazer, lifted my chin high, and walked deliberately across the silent office. Every colleague who had ignored my emails, stolen my credit, or laughed at my ambitions suddenly shrank away, pressing themselves against the cubicle walls as I passed. Arthur lunged forward, clawing desperately at the air. "You can't do this. The board will never accept a black woman with no executive backing running a multi-billion-dollar institution. You'll destroy us all." I stopped just inches from him, looking down into his ruined, panicked face with an expression of absolute chilling calm. "They won't destroy us, Arthur," I whispered softly, letting the cold reality sink into his bones. "They're going to survive because I'm finally running the show. And you're about to find out what real accountability looks like." I turned my back on him, walked into the boardroom, and seated myself firmly at the head of the executive table. Sung-hyun Cho stepped in right behind my right shoulder, standing like an immovable monolith of protection, while his security detail grabbed Arthur by the shoulders and forcefully dragged him backward out of the penthouse, his muffled protests echoing down the hallway until the heavy glass doors sealed shut. The room was still paralyzed. Dozens of senior directors and vice presidents sat frozen around the mahogany table, waiting to see if I would crumble under the sudden, crushing weight of total power. I didn't flinch. I opened the main console, plugged my personal drive into the central matrix, and pulled up the master financial architecture that I had quietly optimized during all those late nights while Arthur was out playing golf. "Let's get to work," I said, my voice carrying a quiet, devastating steel that made every executive instantly open their notebooks. As I projected the real-time financial schematics onto the massive smartboard, a ripple of quiet panic passed through the remaining senior executives. Director Cole, a crony of Arthur's who had routinely signed off on inflated operational budgets, cleared his throat nervously, attempting a weak, defensive bluff. "Now see here, Maya, Director Jenkins," Cole stammered, his fingers twitching against his polished fountain pen. "While this sudden transition is unconventional, we must adhere to standard corporate governance. We cannot simply rewrite our asset allocation models without a 3-week compliance review by the committee. What you're proposing violates standard protocol." I didn't even look up from my tablet. I simply tapped a single keystroke, routing a specific, highly encrypted file directly to Cole's personal terminal. "Protocol, Director Cole?" I asked softly, my eyes finally lifting to lock onto his sweating face. "Is protocol the reason why your private consulting firm received $300,000 from the same offshore shell company Arthur used to siphon operating capital? Because I have your digital signature right here, time-stamped at 2:14 a.m. last Tuesday." Cole's face turned the color of curdled milk. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The pen slipped from his trembling fingers, clattering loudly against the mahogany table. Stephen Cho leaned down slightly, his dark eyes fixing on Cole with a chilling, predatory amusement. "Director Cole," Stephen whispered smoothly, his voice slicing through the heavy air, "you are welcome to request a compliance review. My security associates outside can escort you to a private room where you can review those documents until your federal hearing tomorrow morning. Or you can shut your mouth, open your ledger, and let Director Jenkins save what's left of your career. Choose wisely." Cole swallowed hard, ducked his head, and frantically began typing, realizing that any further resistance meant immediate destruction. For the next 3 hours, I systematically dismantled the remaining pockets of corruption across every global division. I restructured bleeding liabilities, reallocated frozen liquidity back into growth sectors, and locked down every suspicious pipeline the old regime had relied upon. The board members watched in stunned silence as a complex, multi-layered financial rescue was executed with surgical precision in real time. Stephen Cho stood quietly by the window, a subtle, approving smirk playing at the corner of his mouth as he observed me completely rewrite the corporate hierarchy from the ground up. By the time the closing bell rang on Wall Street, Apex Global's stock had surged 9% on preliminary rumors of executive restructuring and internal cleansing. The leeches were gone, and the glass ceiling hadn't just been cracked, it had been shattered into a million irreparable pieces, never to be rebuilt again. If you want to see how we handle corporate backstabbers when we finally get the keys to the kingdom, smash that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment with your thoughts on how Maya turned the tables, and stay tuned for the next explosive corporate war.